Thousands of cattle, 30 years of crap, and Heracles has to clean it in one day. And now if somebody walked up to you and said, hey, you need to clean 30 years of accumulated cow pies out of a stable, you'd probably ask a few questions like, where's the shovel? Where's the nearest exit? And exactly how much am I getting paid for this? But Heracles walks in, looks at the mess, and basically says, bet. Now either this man knew something that nobody else did, or he completely had lost his marbles in the Aegean Sea. We're about to figure out which one it was.
Myths and mayhem, say my name. Myths and mayhem, stoke the flame. From Troy to the sea, they're still chasing me. Myths and mayhem, take the stage. Myths and mayhem, turn the page. Old gods, new scars, still lighting up the stars.
Welcome back to Myths and Mayhem, the show where gods create problems, kings make them worse, and heroes slowly discover that being the strongest guy in the room doesn't mean that you should solve every problem by punching it. Sometimes you just need to find a river. So last time Heracles brought King Eurystheus the Erymanthian boar, a massive, uncontrollable beast, and Eurystheus, he had a problem. Heracles, he kept coming back. Every time Eurystheus gave him something impossible, Heracles somehow came back having figured it out. And it wasn't that he was just surviving these labors. He was learning. The lion had taught him courage. The hydra had forced him to think strategically. The golden hind had taught him patience. And the boar had taught him restraint. And Eurystheus was starting to realize something. This wasn't the same Heracles who had started these labors. So Eurystheus had to come up with something else. If monsters weren't going to break him, maybe humiliation would. And what could be more humiliating than sending the greatest hero in Greece to clean a barn? Except this wasn't exactly a barn. Now King Augeas had enormous herds of cattle, thousands of them, and the waste from those cattle had been accumulating for 30 years. You heard me right, for 30 years. And now, if you have ever been around a cattle farm, you already know what manure smells like. And that's in a pasture outside, where eventually the crap gets worked into the ground. This was just sitting there in a massive stable for 30 years. You don't get close to this place and think, what's that smell? You smelled this from miles away and thought, yeah, I forgot I have an appointment that way, and you're pointing in the opposite direction. And Eurystheus looked at this situation and thought, perfect, Heracles, go clean it. So Heracles heads to Elis, and he goes up to King Augeas. Now Augeas probably wasn't the best guy. Scratch that. He definitely wasn't the best of guys. And Heracles walks in and offers him a deal. And this deal took some real stones to offer up. This guy walks into the king and says, King Augeas, I will clean your stables, and I will do it in one day. And when I'm done, you'll give me 1/10 of your cattle. Now that's confidence. That's the kind of confidence that a prize bull has walking into a herd of cows. He knows he's getting something done that day. I don't know if he knew a secret. I don't know if he already had figured out what he was going to do, but he walked in there with the confidence of a man who apparently wasn't planning on shoveling 30 years of crap by hand. Augeas agrees. Now here's the important part. His son Phyleus was there, and Phyleus was a good man. Generally a good dude. He believed his father should keep his word. Now remember that name, because we're going to come back to him. If this had been the old Heracles, he probably would have just grabbed a shovel, he would have started shoveling manure like he was competing in the world's worst Olympic event, and he probably would have worked until his back gave out. And then he would have picked up a bigger shovel, because that's what Heracles used to do. See a problem, hit it. If it's a bigger problem, hit it harder. If it's a massive problem, apparently get a bigger object. That is totally textbook AGHS, Ancient Greek Hero Syndrome, and Heracles was in an intensive recovery program. He looked at those stables, he looked at all that crap and realized, "Yeah, I'm not doing this by hand." So he stopped. He looked around. He studied the terrain. And nearby there were two rivers, the Alpheus and the Peneus. And Heracles realized something. Why spend the entire day moving 30 years of crap when I could make the river do it for me? Now we're talking. So Heracles gets to work. He opens up the walls of the cattle yard. He creates canals, and then he diverts the Alpheus and the Peneus so that the rivers flow directly through the stables. Now, when those rivers came through, it wasn't exactly a little stream. It wasn't a garden hose. It wasn't a pressure washer. It was more like 50 fire hoses that had personally decided that they were tired of looking at 30 years of accumulated crap. And suddenly, all that waste was moving. Years of it, gone, washed away, and Heracles had done it. The stables were clean, and because Heracles apparently wasn't interested in permanently rearranging the geography of Greece, he redirected the rivers back into their normal courses. And there it was, 30 years of crap gone. And here is what I really love about this. Heracles didn't become stronger to solve this problem. He became smarter. He didn't need a bigger shovel. He needed a better idea. So Heracles goes back to Augeas. The stables are clean. The deal has been fulfilled. 1/10 of the cattle, time to collect. Except Augeas had learned something. Heracles hadn't come here because he wanted a job. He had been ordered here by Eurystheus. And suddenly Augeas thought, well, if this is one of his labors, why should I pay him? So Heracles reminds him of his agreement. And Augeas basically says, nope, didn't happen. I never promised you that. And now, if Augeas was living today, he might just as well have looked at Heracles directly in the face and said, I never said that. Except Phyleus was there. Remember Phyleus, the good guy? He stood up and told the truth. Yes, father, you promised him the cattle. Now, Augeas had a problem because his own son had just confirmed that Heracles was telling the truth. And Augeas was furious, not because Heracles was wrong, but because Phyleus had just chosen honesty over his own father. And Augeas banished his son from Elis. And Heracles, he left too. And he left without a single cow. Now Heracles, he was furious. Now one guy you really don't want to make angry is Heracles. Do you remember Linus? Heracles got so frustrated with that guy that he introduced a lyre to his skull. So yeah, don't make Heracles angry. But here's where we see the difference. Heracles wasn't just angry, he was furious. And he had every reason to be. But he didn't react the way the old Heracles would have. He walked away for now because he's learned something. There's a time to act and there's a time to walk away. And this wasn't the time to act yet. So Heracles returns to Mycenae, and somewhere inside the executive jar, Eurystheus is probably wondering, how in the crap is this guy already back? Because this labor should have taken him forever. But when Eurystheus hears what happened, Heracles had agreed to perform the labor for a payment. Eurystheus immediately saw his opportunity. Nope, doesn't count. There are a couple of different explanations given in ancient traditions as to why Eurystheus rejected this labor. One says that Heracles had agreed to receive payment from Augeas, and the other one says that Heracles didn't technically clean the stables himself. The rivers did. And honestly, I think the payment argument makes a little bit more sense because, to be clear, Heracles had done the work. He had to open the walls. He had to create the canals, and he had to redirect the rivers. He had to figure the whole thing out. But Eurystheus, he didn't care. He had his loophole. So Heracles had just cleaned 30 years of crap, redirected 2 rivers, got cheated by Augeas, lost the cattle, and now Eurystheus was telling him, yeah, it doesn't count. Now that's a rough day. Remember, the hydra had already been rejected because Aeolus had helped him out. Now the Augean Stables were rejected because of the payment agreement. So the original 10 labors were becoming 12. And Eurystheus was probably pretty happy about that. Now, the Augean Stables are obviously a story about cleaning up an absurdly ridiculous amount of crap, but there's something else that happened here. Heracles is changing. The old Heracles would have attacked the problem with brute force. The new Heracles stopped. He looked around and figured out what the problem was actually asking him to do. He didn't need more strength, he needed a different tool. And that's something that we've seen throughout these labors. The lion taught him courage, the hydra taught him strategy, the golden hind taught him patience, the boar taught him restraint, and now the Augean Stables, innovation. Heracles again is building a toolbox, and he's going to need every single tool in it, because next time we're heading to Lake Stymphanos, and Heracles is going to have to deal with thousands of bronze birds that are about as welcoming as a swarm of angry chainsaws. So in conclusion, Heracles was given 30 years of crap and cleaned it in one day. He didn't shovel it. He moved 2 rivers. Augeas refused to pay him. Phyleus told the truth. Augeas banished his own son. Eurystheus pulled a technicality and refused to count the labor, and somehow Heracles still walked away having learned something, because that's the difference between being strong and becoming a hero. You don't just get stronger, you get smarter. You learn patience, you learn restraint, you learn to fight, and you learn when to walk away and when not to. Heracles hasn't forgotten about Augeas, not even a little bit. And so, neither are we. We're going to come back to that story a little bit later. And when we do, Phyleus is going to get the justice that he deserves. But for now, we've got some birds to deal with. Until next time, stay curious, stay legendary, and remember, sometimes the biggest problems don't need a bigger hammer. Sometimes you just need to find the river. See you next time. And if you're enjoying Myths and Mayhem, hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes.